Welcome to ReGen Ag Chat. We have a carbon calling special. So, as you know, our conference is coming up on the 3rd of August. Our headliner is Alan Williams. So, we've got a bit of time with Alan now just to go through why you need to come and see him at the conference and also what you can watch and listen to prior to it to make sure you've got some killer questions for him. So, I'll hand over to Nick and she's going to lead us into the questions.
Thank you, Alan, for giving us this half hour. I just wonder if you could tell us a little bit about you, because we know you from Understanding Ag, but I just wondered if you could give us a bit of a potted history of Alan Williams.
Be very happy to. And first, thank you for allowing me to be here today. So I am a sixth generation family farmer and rancher. I grew up on my family's farm in the state of South Carolina, and they have been there since 1840. They were, at that point in time, a branch of our family moved down from Virginia to South Carolina to start the farm that I grew up on. So the eighth generation is now active in operating my family farm. I do not farm with my family now, and that's not because of any kind of contention of any sort. It's because I moved away from home. When I went to college, I fully intended to go back home to the family farm, and I got my bachelor's degree and did go back home. But I had a very persistent major professor who kept calling me and wanted me to come back to graduate school. And after about a year and a half, I relented and did that. And so I went back and I got my master's and PhD in genetics and physiology. And for whatever reason, and I still to this day cannot tell you why, I felt obligated to go into academia after that. And so that's what I did. So I spent the next 15 years of my life as a research professor and an educator in the university system here in the U.S. And that was particularly in the land grant university system. It was during that time period, and I was very good at what I did academically. I won numerous teaching and research awards. And was a tenured full professor, but I began to realize that a lot of what we were doing, I now call it putting a Band-Aid on a gushing wound. We were addressing symptoms in our research and never the root cause of a problem. And having grown up, in a multi-generational family farm, I slowly began to realize as an academic that a lot of the things that we were doing were not making our farms more profitable. Our soil was not getting healthier. Our animals were not getting healthier. Instead, for all of that, we were becoming increasingly reliant on external inputs. And those external inputs were gradually but surely eroding profit margin. So I made a very hard decision in the year 2000 to get out of academia and to return to farming and ranching. And also I started doing a bit of consulting. So from that time forward, for the last 24 years, I have been back full-time farming and ranching and then consulting around the world. And I was fortunate enough to be able to meet my partner, Gabe Brown, and we decided to start Understanding Ag and the Soil Health Academy. And more recently, we started a third company called ReGenified, which is a regenerative verification company. And we have been very blessed to have been able to work in all 50 U.S. states, 45 plus other countries around the world. And we are working globally on more than 50 million acres and on 34 million acres in the U.S. alone. So that's sort of where we're at today. What I have discovered and what we continue to prove day after day and year after year is that the principles that we're going to talk about in our workshops here in August, those principles, what we now call the 634, the 6 principles of soil health, the 3 rules of adaptive stewardship, and the 4 ecosystem processes work everywhere, regardless of your climate, regardless of your agricultural enterprise, regardless of your context. They work. The principles work, and you can make radical changes that are very positive in nature if you intentionally and contextually apply these principles to your operations. So that's a large part of what we're going to be covering and what we're going to be discussing in our workshops is how do we contextually apply that 634 to each farmer's individual farm.
But I guess if you were in this country and you're thinking, shall I go and listen to Alan in Cumbria? And the naysayers might say, or the ones on the fence might say, well, he's from the States. What relevance does his climate and context have to me? And I guess you're saying it's completely relevant.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And I would also say, this isn't our first time in the UK. And we have been working in the UK for a number of years now, quite successfully. So we do have direct experience in the UK and Ireland and many other European countries. And so we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the 634 does work in the UK. And the truth is, there are several places in North America throughout which we work extensively that are very, very similar to the UK. That's quite honestly, that's one of the things that when, the colonists first came over here, they discovered that. They discovered that, hey, this is not some world that is totally foreign to us. We actually recognize a lot about this climate and about the way things grow, and a lot of the early settlers that came over from the UK and Scotland and Ireland and other places were able to very successfully implement agriculture the way they had already been doing it in the UK. So it's not as disparate and dissimilar as people may think at all.
Yep.
And I think in certain places it's raining with me currently, but do you mean we have a bit more guaranteed rainfall than certain bits of the States, don't you? So certainly both Nick and I have done holistic management, and quite a lot of that work is based on very brittle situations where we would like to class ours as brittle, but actually in comparison to other places, we're in a quite fortunate position.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. That is a strength and a weakness, to be honest with you. And that's when we first started working in the UK and Ireland, that's one of the things Gabe and I quickly noted is that number one, that is a significant strength that you have over there, a significant advantage over, a number of places in North America. Now, again, keep in mind, there are places in North America that are quite similar and enjoy environments very similar to the environment you enjoy in the UK. And the adaptive management that we employ is quite different than the brittle environment only that most people associate with holistic management. Again, we have worked across all environments. So, that argument doesn't really apply that, well, we've only worked in brittle and semi-brittle environments. That's just simply not the case with us within understanding ag. But I will also say that your more frequent rainfall is also one of your chief disadvantages because too many people are so reliant on that and so reliant on a very forgiving environment that the honest truth is it can get easily mistreated. And you can create situations that if you do have a year in which you have a weather anomaly, you can be severely adversely affected because of that. You're not prepared for that at all. And there are ways that you can manage through the 634 that allow you to be resilient regardless of that. Whether, and what was it, just 2 years ago, you did experience a drought. And we can say, or what you might call a drought, that's and in the U.S. we would call that a hiccup, but for many in the U.K. when we were over there, they were despairing that, oh my goodness, we're so hot, we're so dry, we've never experienced this before. So, we definitely want to help people become more resilient, because those types of things are going to happen again. That was not an anomaly that the UK experienced in today's age. That will happen again. And if you look at what's happening in mainland Europe, we are seeing desertification beginning to occur. And we are also seeing significant groundwater depletion beginning to occur. I just looked at a current groundwater map of mainland Europe, and it's quite concerning when you begin to look at what's happening. And make no mistake about it, what's happening there will absolutely begin to impact weather patterns in the UK, Scotland, and Ireland as well.
I think, well, it's we see the positives, which is the champagne makers are moving into Kent, but we also have to realise that, as you say, that the Sahara is extending northwards, isn't it, or trying to?
Yes.
And there are examples of where people are doing regenerative practices and covering soil and protecting it, isn't there? So it's not like the end is nigh. We can do stuff about it. It's just you're suggesting that we're not quite up against the wall as much as we could be yet. That made sense. Do you mean we still got a cushion?
And that's correct. You still got a cushion, and while you still got a cushion, now is the time to really understand that and to implement principles and practices that are going to allow you to create greater resilience. Yeah, that's really critically important. But the good thing is that along the way, in the journey to create resilience, you are also creating heightened productivity and carrying capacity, better yields in your crops, you're creating better resistance to disease and pest, and you're creating far better net profitability. So those are the things that come along with this. And so it's not just that the only thing that you're doing is creating resilience against tougher times. No, you're creating a ton of benefits that are going to give you an advantage along that journey.
And I think some of the challenge we've got, and I know Stu Johnson, who spoke to him on a podcast, I mean that at the moment we haven't got a huge number of examples of farms to go and see that are quite the way down that. So, James, a lot of it is about, can we visualize the difference that's happening on the farm? And a lot of us have been to regenerative farms, and they might be applying some of the principles, but as you say, it's that holistic application. We haven't got a huge number of examples yet in the UK.
That's correct. But for the examples that you do have, there are significant advancements that have been made, and they are the case studies. That yes, in the UK, this absolutely can be done, and it can be done very profitably, very effectively, very efficiently. There's the beautiful thing about regenerative agriculture is that this is an ongoing journey. It is not something that all of us, you implement these principles and practices, and then within 2 years, 3 years, or whatever, well, you're there. and then it's all done and said with. That's not what regenerative is all about. Regenerative is about continuous ongoing progress. And I can attest to the fact that both Gabe and myself, even though our personal farms are in very, very different regions and environments in North America, we have both experienced ongoing improvement and increases in net profitability over more than 30 years now. Gabe since the 1990s and myself since the 1990s. So we are personal testimonies to the benefits of regenerative agriculture and what we have experienced on our own farms. And neither one of us would make the claim that our individual farms are fully regenerated, not even close. As a matter of fact, Gabe and I would readily admit we do not know what a 100% regenerated soil or farm looks like, because nobody on the face of the earth has seen that. Everybody is still dealing with at least a somewhat degraded resource. And so that's not something to despair about. That's something to celebrate, because if you can continue over 3 decades plus making significant progress, who would not want that to happen? You know, why would you want to reach a state where, well, we've done all we can do and this is what it's going to be from now on? That's no fun anymore. You know, so to us, that's the beautiful thing about regenerative. You do have the opportunity to continuously make positive progress.
And how is the regenerative movement going down over there in the States?
It had, well, I can give you several statistics here and anecdotes to help answer that question. Number one, when we started understanding ag in 2016, we were working on less than 1 million acres in the U.S. Today, we're working more than 34 million acres. That's exponential progress any way you do the math. Go from under 1 million acres to over 34 million acres in less than a 10-year time span. And by 2025, we'll be on probably 50 million plus acres here in the U.S. So that's very rapid progress. We are seeing, large numbers of farmers and ranchers that are coming into regenerative agriculture. And for various and sundry reasons, it's not all the same reason, but we are seeing very large numbers. Our soil health academies have been a resounding success. Even after almost 10 years of hosting soil health academies, we are still filling those and have quite a demand for those. We are also seeing a lot of food and fiber companies, and some of these very major food and fiber companies that are now going down the regenerative path and have contracted with Understanding Ag and the Soil Health Academy to be able to educate the farmers and ranchers that are producing the goods for those major food and fiber companies. So, 10 years ago, that was not happening at all. And when you begin to see major food and fiber companies enter this space, you know that it's real. You know that there's something to this. And they themselves are now going to become a major driver in this whole deal. We're also seeing increasing interest by our government and our U.S. Department of Agriculture. We just taught a multi-day regenerative workshop to some of the top officials in the USDA. And so efforts like that are ongoing. And we're also seeing more and more research that is being done. The Roots So Deep project and the accompanying docu-series that details the research that we did there. And that's still ongoing. We've got more research that's being conducted in the Roots So Deep project. Dr. Jonathan Lundgren's 1,000 Farms initiative is going quite well, and that's measuring 1,000 plus farms compared to conventional farms. So 1,000 plus farms that are operating regeneratively compared to their conventional neighbors is going quite well. That's through Ecdysis Foundation. And we've got numerous other efforts like that. So there are also quite a few investment funds and family funds that are now heavily investing in regenerative agriculture. And the beautiful thing about it is we're not just seeing this occur in the U.S., but we are seeing this occur globally. The interest in regenerative agriculture has increased exponentially practically all over the globe. And we're getting calls and emails literally every single day from many countries around the world looking to implement regenerative agriculture where they are.
And you mentioned the Roots So Deep. That's a 4-part documentary series. That's we can put the link in the show notes, but it's definitely, I'm halfway through, but it's definitely it's powerful watching.
Yes, absolutely. And Peter Bick is a master storyteller and a master at capturing not only details of the research that was conducted, but also capturing the human element. And one of the beautiful things about Roots So Deep is that even though it is directly comparing neighboring farmers in multiple states in the U.S., with one neighbor operating regeneratively and the other operating conventionally, the documentary is not disparaging or condemning the neighbor that is operating conventionally at all. It's sharing their story and their why. And that is what is so powerful about this documentary, is that the neighbors actually are helping each other. And without revealing the end, I will say that in episode 4, where the results are revealed, the human element is even more powerful than the data results. The data results are really incredibly compelling, but the human element that is revealed there is also quite compelling.
Yeah, and I think the human element is a big part of what Carbon Calling's all about, because if you've been doing something for all your life, your working life, and then somebody says, actually, there's a better way, it's a hard pill to swallow, isn't it?
Well, it is, and I can tell you just personally that it is. Again, being a 6th generation family farmer and growing up, within that, as farmers and ranchers, we are very traditional people. We're also a very stubborn people. We don't like change, and many times we're fearful of change. And so, even just talking about change within the farming community can often create anxiety. So I've been through that myself. Gabe has been through that. We walked that walk personally, and so I can share that with others. What compelled me to make the changes I made? Why did I make those changes when I was no different than any other farmer out there? I wasn't special. I didn't know more than anybody else. So I had to make this journey as well. And so a large part about this is just sharing, how do we make the journey? What's the context of that journey? And what was our why? And what did we experience along the way that's the other thing that is critical to share here. What were our experiences? What types of problems and issues did we encounter along the way, and how did we overcome those? That's the other thing that we want to share with people.
And so Nick, in terms of just how did you access the Roots So Deep?
I think I just Googled it. I Googled it, and then I think I paid $11, which I don't know what that is in pounds. And I've got a month to watch the 4 episodes.
Okay. So yeah, I think it's the website is rootsodeep.org, and then the details are on there as well. So yeah, I suppose we're encouraging people to watch it, aren't we, before, or you can do what you want, but I'm hoping to watch it as well before Carbon Calling. Just on one thing, there's also a mention of a TED Talk. Alan, have you done a TED Talk that we can also watch to get ourselves warmed up?
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, absolutely. I would first encourage people to watch Roots So Deep if they can prior to Carbon Calling. That will give them a lot of good background. Secondly, the TED Talk is only 10 minutes, so it's very quick to watch. And they can just simply Google "first heal the soil." First heal the soil. And if they Google that, the TED Talk will come right up.
Importantly, I thought as in heal, as in healer, not as in heel of the foot. That's what I've just typed in, so that's not helpful. Heal as in medicine, not as
Yes,
in
heal
a
heal
foot.
as in medicine. Correct. And my
Homophone.
deep South accent, can sometimes cause confusion. So
Well,
yes.
it could. Oh no, anyway. And then we'll have more time at the conference in terms of talk about Regenify, but we're sort of in the UK just on the cusp of that. Interesting, as you say, there are more companies interested in wanting to purchase regenerative or products from regenerative farms. And then with the debate of accreditation is just starting to come in. So that'll be interesting for people to pick up on as well. And I think, well, Gabe came over recently, didn't he, to have a chat with Waitrose about possibly using that approach for some of their farms.
Yes, he did, and so we are actively engaged with Waitrose, and their goal is to have 100% of the products in their stores regeneratively produced by the year 2035. So in a decade, and that is a very definitive goal that they have now explicitly stated. Gabe also met with King Charles and is going to meet with him again in August. And King Charles is keenly interested in all of the royal family farms being regeneratively verified as well. So we're working with that also. So there are very definitive things that are going on, both in the UK and then other countries in Europe, where regenerative verification is becoming a hot button topic and something that many are delving into now.
Yeah, and it's the debate we always have, which is how do you we want it to get to scale, don't we? But we also don't want it to be diluted down. It's a really interesting time.
Well, and that's the reason we developed the system within the protocols and standards within Regenified, is to prevent that. Too often, it's easy to what I call game or cheat certifications. You can find the loopholes. And the Regenified standards and protocols were designed so that that could not take place. First and foremost, it's a tiered system, and so that any farmer can begin wherever they're at. That's critically important, because with a lot of certifications, you can't. It's hard to even begin. So with Regenified, it offers an entry into that. And then it's a tiered system so that once you reach a certain tier, you cannot park there. You can't stay in a tier. You can't just simply say, well, I'm happy where I'm at, so I'm not going to work to progress, because regenerative is about continual progression. So once you reach a certain tier, you have so many years to progress to the next tier and the next and the next. And that reflects reality of what really goes on in the real world. And it's scalable. Many of these other certifications are not feasibly scalable, or they're very hard to scale. With Regenify, it's scalable, and you've got to have a system that's quite scalable, or otherwise it only benefits a few and not the many. So that's, a lot of those things were built in to be able to prevent it from being gamed or cheated, and to allow it to be continuously scalable, and to allow for ongoing regenerative progress to be noted, monitored, and awarded, to the farmer.
And because a proportion of it is practice based, isn't it? Or is it practice based or outcomes?
Well, it's both. See, that's the
Okay.
deal. It's a combination of both, and really, it must be. You can't just measure outcomes. That over time, the truth is that will not work, and there's many past attempts that have proven that. Are you measuring the right outcomes, and what are you comparing those to? What's your basis? What's your foundation? Oftentimes, there's issues with that when you have solely an outcome-based program. So Regenified is measuring first and foremost more than 65 different data points. And those data points are a combination of both adherence to the principles and the rules, and how well they are positively impacting the ecosystem processes, along with very hardcore data points that are measured by third party. So you're sending soil samples, for instance, to third party laboratories and all of that for analysis. So there are very, very definitive data points that are measured to be able to go along with the assessment of how well that farm is adhering to the principles, the rules, and the ecosystem processes. So that's another thing that makes Regenified unique and allows this system to be fully scalable over many generations to come.
Thank you. It's just, we're just on the cusp of what could happen here, really. I went to groundswell's just happened here, and I went somewhere, and was a hospitality business, and they were doing 2.6 million servings a day. It could be a cup of coffee, it could be food. Do you mean it's 2.6 million? And they're less than 1% of their products are regenerative at the moment, and within the next 5 to 10 years they want it at 40%. So all of a sudden it's sort of, what's the word? It's sort of rolling. The momentum is building, isn't it? And actually, I'm just curious at the moment, we don't have the capacity in terms of either proving it or delivering that level of food production. And obviously some of that won't be UK based, but we'd like it to be more UK based. So I just think it's just the debate is happening here. So I think it's a relevant chat to have. So thanks, Alan, for that. The key in all of it is that Alan is at Carbon Calling on the 3rd of August. He is doing a presentation where we're hearing all about, in more detail, about 634 and also how he's using it on various client farms. There's an opportunity to have a workshop with him, so that's about 40 other people in a workshop. And then we're using Tim and Emma's farm, who's the host farm, to apply the 634 to them. So we'll see how they get on. And then there's also a panel session that Alan is is going to be part of at the end of the day. So we're going to work him hard. And if there's enough interest, he's going to do a workshop again in the evening. So as we're all having a pint, he'll be out in the field again. So we're working him hard. Mainly massive thanks to Regenerate Outcomes for the sponsorship of Alan as well. So we really appreciate that.
So Alan, for beef and sheep, it's kind of a no-brainer. It's very, it's, you know, it's all about the grazing and stuff. And for the arable boys, and girls, it's all about soil. If you're a dairy farmer, and what would your message? How would you encourage dairy farmers to come? What could they get out of it?
Absolutely, dairy farmers need to come. You know, we work with a lot of dairy farmers around the world, so they are a large part of our consulting business. And what I can say is that we've been able to make very radical and positive changes with dairy farmers and to significantly improve their productivity, their resilience, and their profitability. So this is just as relevant to a dairy farmer as it is to a beef or sheep farmer or an arable farmer. They're dealing with soil, they're dealing with plants, they're dealing with animals, just like everybody else is. And the one thing that I will absolutely say is that we pay particular attention to relating everything that we teach, everything that we show, to the context of where we are. You know, we're not going to talk about what we're doing in the US or what we're doing in an African country or over in Asia or whatever, or South America. We're going to talk about what you're doing in the UK and what we are seeing right there in the UK. And I'm going to be asking you a lot of questions about your context so that we can drill this down to what are the very specific things that you can do and implement under the regenerative principles that are going to be valuable to you within your individual farm context, not my farm context, because I farm in Mississippi, but within your farm context. So that's what I want people to know. They're not going to hear, they can ask me questions about my farming in Mississippi and I'll answer them, but that's not what the workshop is about. The workshop is about what is happening there, boots on the ground, and how do we make improvements that are going to help you to be able to make that ongoing progress.
On that note, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So more details in terms of where you can book tickets and various things are on our website, which is carboncalling.farm, and we'll also put links to the various things we've talked about this evening. Thanks. Bye for now.